We're live for episode 9 of Teriyaki T'ursday. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching, please like and comment with thumbs up or meow in the comment section so we know that you're joining us and you're a human being.
I wish that my hair stuck out in the front like yours to block the shine on my forehead.
Well, if wishes were horses, we'd all be eating steak. We're talking about... Name that reference. If you're watching, you get 5 points for naming what series that's from. So today, we've been talking about this kind of a continuation. We've been talking about the importance of, well, the three-legged stool in holistic kung fu, right? Kind of those 3 pillars that we base everything on. And those pillars are, the first one we talked about 2 weeks ago was activity, right? The second pillar is habits. And now the third pillar today is mindset and self-image, which is I also like to, we use a lot of what we call psycho-cybernetics from the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, fantastic book. We use that in our curriculum, and he uses the term the servo mechanism, which is kind of like a term that I would use if more people knew what it meant, but they don't. So we kind of say, mindset, self-image, that kind of general thing. But the servo mechanism, the subconscious mind, the way it operates and the way you can guide it to support you in whatever area of development you're working on. That's kind of what we mean when we say self-image and mindset. The servo mechanism is really the word that I would like to use if more people knew what that means.
Use the word like you're focused.
Oh, hi, see you on Zoom in a bit. Okay, Lacey's gonna
yeah, if you're watching, you can join us.
If you guys are a current student and you know your class code, then you can click on that link and you can join us live and you can interact with us.
And we have a snazzy new way to get on there. If you go on the website and log in, it's at the top, join your virtual class. You don't even have to go to your course anymore.
That's awesome. Wow, that is so convenient.
Yes.
It used to be not that convenient. Now it's so convenient. So why don't we start off with, why don't you tell me what you think about the servo mechanism, and then I'll tell you why you're wrong and I'm right.
Okay, sounds good.
Not actually going to do that. It was a joke. That was a joke.
Well, I really like the book Psycho-Cybernetics, and all of the books we read kind of reinforce that book. But if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. You can get it on audiobook, but it's basically just the automatic self-conscious part of your body that works towards a goal, so you don't have to consciously do it all the time. Right, you put the quarter in and then it goes basically, but you have to keep putting quarters in. So
so it's like a mechanism that serves you.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's one really good analogy from the book where I think he's talking about a missile launch or a plane launch, some kind of automatic
torpedo.
Thing. Yeah, maybe it's a torpedo.
I think it's torpedo.
Yeah. And it's like going towards a goal, and when it starts to make a mistake, it'll just adjust, by like 1 degree. It doesn't like overcorrect like new people on a bicycle, right? When we first start working at something and we start to veer off, we tend to overcorrect. Like when you first ride a bicycle, you start falling to the left, you turn too hard and then you fall over. But the longer you do it, the more you just have to make tiny little adjustments.
Make small corrections. It seems like when you sparring too, and when you spar and there's new people sparring, they kind of like to jump all over the place, right? And like that.
Down,
and then exactly, and then when you get more experience, you're like, I just gotta wait here, and at the right time, then I'll attack or retreat or defend or whatever I need to do. But you're a lot more relaxed, and you only put energy when you need to. So with experience comes that kind of wisdom. Right?
Yeah, and it's intuitive, and it takes that upkeep at first, like we talked about before. Like you need to have that blast off part, but then you just have to have little corrections, and a lot of it's automatic as long as you keep the goal in mind, right? You know where your target is. Those mechanisms in your mind to keep you going. If you listen. If you listen, yeah.
And how would you say those mechanisms work? How do they tell you?
Well, we all have. Some of it's automatic, like you don't have to consciously think, oh, I'm falling to the right. Like when you ride your bike, you don't think, well, I'm falling to the right. Now I'm going to turn right. Like you do at first, like your mom or dad tells you, you got to turn into where you fall. So you think about it a lot, but then it just you just learn, right? It's like balance or walking, right? So as long as you're putting in an effort, right? And then your subconscious mind, your servo mechanism starts to kick in, and then it collects information and processes it while you sleep. So an analogy we use all the time in class is like when you're playing a video game for you gamers, and I'm talking about like games with levels, right? Or any game, right? Like Mario, right? You get this level and you can't beat it, and you like play it 100 times, you can't beat it, then you rage quit, you go to bed. The next day you beat it the first time. Because while you were sleeping, your servo mechanism processed all the failure data and spit out the correct answer,
what
right?
not to do.
It taught you what not to do. You don't have to think about it. You just come, you do your work, you go to sleep, the next day you wake up.
And it's interesting, you see, and if you wouldn't have tried in the first place, your subconscious mind wouldn't have gotten all that feedback to figure out what to do. And that brings me to another point I want to make, because you use that bicycle analogy, and I really like that analogy. And actually, Maxwell Maltz used that in the book when talking about balance, because we know that in the end, it's all about balance. Finding that balance. Well,
things you can say at any point in any conversation. It's all about
any conversation you're in, you could always sound like the wiser person by saying, in the end, it's all about finding that balance.
The friends we made along.
And so a little bit of a cliche, but he says that, like riding a bicycle, you can really only find balance whilst moving forward.
Yeah.
So a lot of people forget to move because they're trying to find balance. Well, trying to find balance by sitting on your bicycle, not moving, right, is, pretty stupid exercise.
And it's like the balance lives within the imbalance, right? So if you just stand, or if you lay down, right, you're perfectly balanced, but you're not going anywhere, right? So when you move forward, you're putting in the imbalance with your work, and then there's other balance that has to be there to keep moving.
Counterbalance. So what are some, when we talking about the servo mechanism now, what are some bad examples of the servo mechanism? How can the servo mechanism be not serving you or working against you, unknowing to it?
One thing that we teach in leadership class is the servo mechanism is like a garden. So it's going to work just as hard to grow weeds and harmful things as it will to grow flowers and fruits and vegetables. So if it doesn't have the discernment of like,
it doesn't qualify right or wrong.
Yeah. So whatever you feed it, it's going to grow more of that. So it can be used against you, right? Like, especially for people that don't know about that, like kids, right? So if it can be bad for kids if they have abusive or like toxic environments growing up, and that their servo mechanism latches on to whatever's around them, teaches them that whatever the abusive party is saying is true.
So and we all, even without the negative childhood experiences, that's typical one. But the servo mechanism, it's not only that it will, it'll prevent us from reaching new heights in our development. It will actually sabotage our development if we aren't careful, if we allow it to, right? Because it doesn't discern. The subconscious mind will bring what it's focused on, right? What you're focused on a subconscious level, it will draw those things towards you. At the same time, if your self-image isn't congruent with what you're trying to achieve or what you're trying to earn, what you're trying to become, the subconscious mind will self-sabotage your behavior. And we do that all the time.
That could be a good thing and a bad thing, right? Like if you start getting something and you're like, this doesn't feel right, it could be that it's against your values. Or it could just be that you're out of your comfort zone. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah. I guess it is hard to tell. Well, with practice, you figure it out, right? One feels a little bit scary and it kind of excites you at the same time. That's a good thing to, how do you explain that to know the difference? That's a tough call, I guess.
It is hard. Well, you have to, it's all, you could say it's all subjective. Everything's worth looking at, right? So, hi Lacey. Oh, you're muted.
Oh,
there you go.
she'll be on.
Nice. Man.
Hi.
Oh, I gotta turn you up.
You look so spiritual.
Thank you.
Keep talking for a little bit. I gotta sing a song or something. Sing.
I'm not a gamer, but I've been really appreciating all of the video game references and have been thinking for the last couple hours a lot about non-playable characters in real life.
Oh yeah, NPC energy. Miss me
Non-playable,
with that.
non-playable characters. Okay, so give us whatever, like a 30-second spiel on what you mean by that, non-playable characters.
Oh, so some people in life are just not programmed with the full picture. So their entire reality is limited to whatever your analogy for the game is, right? So they have no ability to expand or perceive the big picture at all because they're not programmed to be able to do that. And there's nothing that can be done about that. So I think just being able to discern, the people that you can play with and the people that you can't, and just let that go, right? Because they just don't have the programming.
So, okay.
And that has helped me like understand certain people too, right?
Yeah. No, so we had this conversation today. Okay. So we were
okay.
talking
Oh, I
about
didn't hear what she said.
you just were she's trying to like figure. We had this conversation already. So I'm just giving you a little bit of background because it sounds just. What did you say? She said it sounds like red pill, blue pill kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it kind of is, right? So okay. How I was putting it, we were talking about how when you understand like video games are a very good reference for this, okay? Because in life, we have challenges in life, right? And that's what makes us stronger. And like playing a video game, if you're a good video game designer, you have a good balance between not having something too difficult, not having something too easy. And if something is too easy and the challenges aren't there, the game's going to get boring very, very fast. And if the game is too difficult, you're going to whip your remote at the TV and shatter it, and then no more video games. Right? So like life, we have, challenges that come up. And if you think of it like a video game, it's a good analogy for one, because in a spiritual sense, right? When you're in the game, you're still trying to do the best you can, but it's a game. Okay, so imagine that if we were living in like a holographic type of universe. Okay, I'm just gonna 1 second. That's going to be background noise, but clue in if you need to say something.
Who's my robot?
Okay, so let's say, I hope this doesn't get too off topic, but let's
No,
say
it's good. This is like Matrix,
we're
so-
in a holographic universe, right? Which is
You live in a bubble.
the theory. Okay, now there's programming rules that are laid out. Okay, now within that game, you understand the rules. Now, some people have, not through anything that they know, because everything logical is within this system, right? But intuitively, they know that there's something beyond the system. They know that we're playing a game, and there's some kind of sense of something else that you can't exactly see because you're busy in the game, but there's something else going on once the game is over. You can sense it, right? Now, if someone like a character in the game, that's a non-playable character, for example, they wouldn't have that sense because their whole reality is built solely into the game, and they're not programmed for any intuition beyond that game.
Beyond what they're programmed to do.
Beyond what they're programmed to do, which is in the game. Now, it's not something that you can really explain. It's something that has to be felt, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's kind of what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so like I've heard this like non-playable character energy, NPC energy, like are people that are just like, well, this is it, and this is what I do, and I don't do anything outside of what my programming tells me to do. So why would I? And
Yeah.
it sucks, but it's all because of external factors that I have no control over. So it's an external locus of control.
Exactly, an external locus of control. These are the the parameters that are in place, and they're going to run, and that's just it, right? And now this is where, when it comes to Be Like T, this is the difference: is that
Reprogram,
an NPC can be, softened by the water, like the carrot, or hardened by the water, like the egg, right? Whereas an actual awake person will be able
we're people,
to.
we're not video game
Yeah,
characters,
exactly.
so
So a
it's
person,
not preset to say some people are just destined to be NPC. It's an NPC thought. So you have to say that everybody has the chance to get out of the NPC.
Yeah.
And wake up out of that.
Yeah. So anyway, did you have anything else that you want to add to that? At least since you're live with us.
There we go. Miss Gibbon, that was so beautiful what you just brought into that. Like, you're like, it's okay, so that you don't have to be an NPC forever. Like, so positive. I love that you straight up are feeling that everybody can wake up. And I'm like, that is so refreshing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank
I
you.
don't know. I just always consider that everybody can do that. Maybe not everybody.
Well,
I would say maybe the vast majority of people, like adults and people with sound. I don't know.
I guess ultimately being an NPC is a choice.
yeah, yes, everything. Well,
It's a choice, but not everyone's aware of the choice. I think, and I don't know if you believe in any kind of afterlife or reincarnation or not. If you do, maybe you wake up in another life. Maybe you wake up in this life. I don't know. Anyway, that's another tangent, but
Well, I love feeling all the experience points I feel like I'm getting and like really leveling up since I started training with you guys. So
yeah.
I have infinite lives until game over, but I feel like, doing Kung Fu is like the cheat code from like the original Mario, when you hit the turtle shell against the stairs and you get
and you just
infinite
sit there and you
lives.
bounce on them again and again and again and again, and you keep getting live. Yeah.
So-
Glad you're in the know on that
so
one.
I did know that one, but that's what training Kung Fu is like, having infinite lives.
Being on that turn, just pop it again and again and again and again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's awesome. So let's go back to our servo mechanism, because this is the thing that helps you level up out of that NPC mode, is understanding that you have this potential with the servo mechanism.
How do you change it and use it?
And how to change
and
it.
it's like a thermostat. We were saying it can sabotage you. That's where
Exactly. So the thermostat, yeah. So actually, but did you say you're reading the started reading the big league?
I've read it before.
So I mean, it's something.
Yeah.
It's just that it's different phrasing, right? That
Yeah.
thermostat. What's his name? T. Harv Eker talks a lot about that, the thermostat, but he talks about it on like a financial level, but it's an everything level, right?
Yeah, it's like
we all
in your
have
weight,
this.
in your exercise, like everything.
Yeah, we all have this threshold. So whatever your self-image is set at, that's ultimately like your thermostat, right?
Yeah.
And once you reach that capacity, of your self-image, you're going to sabotage yourself on a subconscious level.
And if that's your servo mechanism.
That's your servo mechanism, exactly.
So like
it's
lottery
literally,
winners.
it's serving you. So when someone wins the lottery, right?
50% of them end up back where they were or worse.
And I think, I don't remember the stat, but like the odds of suicide once you win the lottery like skyrockets as well, right?
Yeah.
Because you're getting circumstances that are suddenly not congruent with your self-image. So it's going to cause that conflict for you, and you're going to be sabotaging that by either blowing the money or losing your health and suddenly getting sick or something like that, right? Or just becoming mentally a mess because you're not.
Or even relationships, if you've been in like abusive or crappy relationships your whole life, and all of a sudden you get someone good, and then they're not that way, you will almost like pull that out of them, or you'll sabotage it.
So now,
it's the same thing.
Again, and there's a reason why we teach this as part of that three-legged stool, because some people will take this idea, this servo mechanism idea, and say, "Oh, great, it's okay. So that means all I have to do is visualize what I want, and it'll happen for me." Well, no, that's a part of it, and used against you, it will sabotage you, but it doesn't mean it's going to do everything for you. You still have to make sure you have the right activity, you have the right habits in place, right? You have to actually take action.
It's not just the vision board.
Yeah, like we talked about being in balance. You're only in balance when you're moving forward. When you're sitting still, there's no balance. You're gonna fall over. So we have to maintain balance through movement, right? But if your self-image is not intact where you want to be, so you bump that thermostat up a little bit higher, you're not going to be able to achieve those results, even if your activity is perfect and your habits are great. If you don't have that mindset in place, you're going to be sabotaging yourself all the time, right? So what do we do about that? How do we change our mindset? How do we change our servo mechanism? What have you learned about that?
This whole thing, the authority, emotion, and repetition, that's a huge
Did
thing.
we talk about this
We
last
talked a
week?
little bit about it in the one where we talked about all three,
Okay.
but also, I think it's important just to understand that concept, that when you push out of your thermostat setting, you will be tempted to self-sabotage, you'll get sick, there'll be resistance coming up, and if you're at least ready for it, and you can withstand the discomfort, you can like just put in some willpower, and it'll take like just like starting a new habit.
That was kind of funny because Heather just came in, and as she came in, Lacey looked that way, and it looked like she was
She's
looking
like,
at
oh, is
Heather
this
out of the screen. How did you know that looking on the screen that Miss Swift was there? Anyway, sorry, but
So that's part of it. The other thing is those three things. So knowing that the resistance.
oh, I wanted to add that, by the way, if you guys don't know what we're talking about, I did write a whole chapter on this in Be Like Tea. And if you guys haven't had a copy of Be Like Tea yet, I'm making an audio video book version of it. So if you would like a copy of it, the audio book, comment in the bottom and say, yes, I would like the audio book. And I will direct message you details on how to get it online. I can't actually offer you the book because Amazon won't let me, but I can give the audio book away. So I can do that. I'll hook you up. Just put your name in the comment section, say I want it, and then I'll send you the info. Okay, but basically what we talk about, this is again, Maxwell Maltz talks about this, and he didn't write this originally. He quoted it from another author, and I can't remember who, but he was saying that the three things that install programming into your subconscious mind. Okay, so if you're if you don't think you're good athletically at a sport, okay, and that's just your belief system, the odds are that belief, that limiting belief, was put in by three factors, as most limiting beliefs are put in by these three factors, right? And those three factors are intensity, right, or emotional intensity, right? Authoritative source, meaning it's a belief put in by someone that really that has authority over you, and their opinion is important to you. And then repetition. So those three things: emotion and intensity, authoritative source, and repetition. Okay. So when you're growing up, and I hate to use a parent, it's just parents an example, easy for most people to digest, but I don't want to make it sound like
not all parents are.
I don't want to make it sound like your problems are all your parents' fault.
And then you can like somehow avoid all these pitfalls.
Yeah, exactly. So, but let's say, for example, okay, that your dad told you something when you were young, like you're crappy at sports, and
You're so
you
stubborn.
got two left feet, right? You got two left feet. That's a compliment, right?
Yeah.
So that's in place. Now, if you were, say, imagine this, you're at your 9th birthday party and you're playing a game with a bunch of your friends and you trip or something, and your dad gets, you have two left feet. And he says that in front of all your friends, and that embarrasses you, right? Now you have a very strong, intense emotion that helped embed that negative belief. And if it happened, often if he said it like that, then it's repetitive. And of course, when you're young and you look up to your father and he's telling you this thing, that's an authoritative source. So those three things can put that in and affect a lot of things later on down the road, whether it's, again, your relationship, your success, whatever it is, those will be affected by that negative belief.
Yeah, and you really see it working with kids. Like you can tell when kids are playing their own programming. Like you'll see a kid trip, and then they'll say that, like, "Oh, I have two left feet." It's like exactly. Kids today don't say that. You clearly got that.
The reading thing is tough.
Oh, he can't read.
So we've had this issue before, but now in our leadership program. In our leadership program, we have students read material they normally wouldn't read, right? Because it's a Black Sash program. And now I know it's difficult, but
they're training at an instructor level.
We're training them at an instructor level.
Learning psychology that they normally wouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, stuff that most psychologists don't don't learn, right? Because when I talk to a lot of them and we talk about some of this stuff, psychocybernetics and stuff, and they have different lingo for it. They're like, "Oh, wow, where,
Yeah.
how did you know that? Where did you get your degree?" And I'm like, "No, it's not. We read about this stuff, but from a different point of view, right? Different lingo. But it's all a lot of it based on the same research. But anyway, shoot, where was I going with that now?
You're talking about reading.
Yeah, so we make the kids read certain stuff that's very difficult for them. And I've had students in the past that, well, they've had some struggle reading. The other thing is that if we make it where they have to read to get their next belt, they're more likely to read on their own if they have to get their next belt than they have to, than if they have to read for school. It's a different thing, right? Because they want the new belt. So it's a way to get them to practice reading more. And of course, if they practice reading more on their own, what's going to happen? They're going to get better at reading. Okay, but if we say, well, they can't read that because they can't, well, then no reading is going to happen. They're not going to get any better. So I know it's a challenge, and it's easier to say, well, they're not good at reading, so we're not going to read. Well, we don't want to do the easy thing. We want to do the thing that's going to make us grow, right?
Like, yeah, like you're like, okay, child, will you read this? And then the kid goes to start, and the parents like, oh no, they can't read. Like they were about to try.
They were about to try it. Yeah.
And you just shut it down.
So we got to let them, fail and skin their knees from time to time, right? As long as it's done safe and everything, just to to get to higher levels. But with kids, another good example of kids is board breaking. I love doing board breaking for the kids because it reminds us as adults, because we laugh and because you'll see two kids, right? You'll see like one kid who could be like older, like 9 years old, and a bulky kid, and he or she would get stumped on the same board that like a 7-year-old skinny kid will break, no problem. And you're like, what? This kid has twice the mass and can't break that board because it's mindset. And you can watch in the eyes and watch the face of the kid get stumped by this board and try to hit and then pull back at the last second. You try to explain, no, you can do it. You physically have the ability because this kid half your size literally just did it. You can do it. But the belief is there. So it holds back and it every time pulls that punch until they believe they can do it, right? Now we watch that and be like, oh, kids are so funny. How could they not know that? But it's a great match because like we do the exact same thing. If someone were looking at us, from a bird's eye view, they'd be like, why did you give up on that? Like all you had to do was put a little more effort and then you had some stupid excuse.
Even adults sometimes have a hard time breaking that.
The actual
same board that like a 5-year-old can break.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I can never do that.
But it's a great reminder about, it's not always about the size. It's a lot of the things that hold us down. Obviously, there's some limitations, but most of the time, the limitations are going to be mindset, right?
And that's like a ritual that we do to change mindset.
The board breaking.
Yes.
The board breaking is a
It's
ritual.
a ritual.
Yeah, exactly. To coach people to doing something they didn't think they could do.
And that's why the black belt is so important too, like getting your black belt or your black sash. The journey there is great and everything, and it's necessary, it's important, but there's just something about going through the prep cycle, going to your graduation and getting your black sash, your black belt, that's so transformative, and everything has to be there to support it. That will have a very permanent and effective like alteration to the mindset. So
Yeah.
that's why we try to make it very special. That's half of the transformation right there. It's just
once you've committed to something for 3 years, you've done it, and it looked impossible at the time. Once you've done it, okay, what else can I do that I thought was impossible 3 years ago? Right? What's the next challenge? You're more likely to take on more. Once you've seen how to get your black sash, setting the long-term goal, breaking it down into weekly and daily activity, sticking with it, even though the adversity comes at you sideways and gets you in your blind spot.
And knowing that that's a rite of passage too. Like they have those in like other cultures, like in the Water Tribe episode where Sokka has to drive the boat through all the rocks, right? That was like I don't remember that. Yeah, when it's like the Bato, the guy that's not his dad.
Oh,
he's like, oh, I would have done that when my dad left for the war, so I never got to become a man.
Right.
So
right.
he like.
That's the last Airbender.
Yeah, that's the one where Aang steals the note. Yeah.
I got the reference.
That is based on that is an actual
Yeah, I think
native
that is
native ritual. I remember reading about
in a
that.
few cultures. I think,
Yeah.
do something like
But in
but they have to go through that ritual to like, for everyone to see them as, you know, whatever, a man, a woman, or a leader, whatever it is. And it doesn't just,
who is that?
it's Rosemary.
Okay, well you go. I'll
Okay.
chat. I'll
All
talk a little bit more.
I'm so excited to do this because like I have my orange sash now and I'm so looking forward to the rest of the journey and that initiation right.
You're on.
Can't wait.
What? How many? Do you have stripes on your orange sash yet?
Not yet.
Not
I'm
yet.
about to get one.
So you're gonna get some soon, and then you're gonna go to the third, and then then you're going into the second, the intermediate program, which is also really cool. A lot of new stuff is coming at you for sure, and it's always gonna be like that, right? You're always gonna be once you hit that level, all new information is thrown at you and becomes overwhelming for a little bit, and then you get used to it, and you're like, okay, I got this, and then.
And then it gets harder.
Yeah, and there's kind of a little bit of a joke. So you're getting to green sash now, and the green sash is the funny. It always works out to be the green sash or green belt, but it's like
It
that.
won't be for her because
She's a little bit longer, so you would have passed this already because you did the belt system. But it's a funny phenomenon around the green sash, which ends up being like around the 2-year mark, right? That not everyone, but a lot of people start to get a little bit arrogant at the green, the green sash, the green belt, because they're starting to rotate through curriculum already. They've already done. They've covered a lot of it. They're like, yeah, I got this. And then it stays around, and from that second year program to maybe another 6 months on to when you're getting the next rank, then it starts to change, and it's like, oh wow, I gotta still learn a lot of stuff, and I gotta test for my black sash in another year or whatever. So then reality starts to hit, but there's always this fun pocket, and it's like 6 months where it's like, I got this. It's that we call it that green sash kind of green sash arrogance, kind of not arrogance. I don't know.
green sash. It's just
confident or just over assuredness.
Well, you mentioned they'll say like, oh, I know this already, but if you've done the curriculum already once or twice, then you should know because you've said those affirmations. Like I maintain a white belt mentality, and like I do, and like I maintain an attitude of gratitude. Well, like these are not just things that I lie to myself anymore. Like I made them true, and you just get so much more out of life when you have that white belt mentality, when you empty your cup, because when your cup is empty you just got more room to fill it. So that's I don't know, I don't want to say I'm different than everybody, but
no, that's a good point. But you brought up another thing there I wanted to talk about, which was the affirmation kind of, and like how you said you were a little bit lying about it until it became true. So I wanted to address that in mindset, because this is really important as well, is the affirmation, right? Because people misunderstand affirmations. They either completely undervalue them or they overvalue them. Okay, can you grab this? So what I mean by that is when affirmations, if someone tries them for the first time and they don't work for that person, okay, they think, well, this is garbage, this doesn't work, right? If you guys know what I'm talking about, affirmation would be you're writing down your affirmations. You want to be a confident person, so you would say, I am a confident person, right? If you want to be an honest person, you say, I am an honest person. So you say that, your morning meditation, you have your tea, your coffee, you take your second to breathe and relax and meditate, and then you install your affirmations, right? The problem is when most people use these things, it's out of a little bit of desperation and it's out of acutely to solve a problem. So for example, right? You're not a confident person. You are at a very low point and you have no confidence. You I am a confident person. And you're like pleading with yourself to make this lie become true, right? That's not how affirmations work. That's the difference between a lie and an affirmation. When you have something you're clearly not, you're trying to make happen, and you just say like, you know, I'm a confident person, you're clearly not because you're falling apart. You're using that symptomatically when you're trying to like get out of the situation. And it's a form of lying to yourself. It's a form of denial. Now the problem is when people do that, they're like, well, these affirmations don't work. It's because you're not using them properly. The point of the affirmation is to reprogram your belief system, right? Just like those belief systems were put in the three functions that we talked about, right? We talked about emotional content, intense emotional content, repetition, and then authoritative source. So those have been programmed in by a type of affirmation that were installed by those three factors. So that same way, you want to use your affirmations to reinstall new programming with these same three factors, right? Green around their ears. German quote. That's cool, Tara. I didn't know that. Thank you very much. That's, yeah. I kind of felt like green was a little bit, felt like there was something there. Yeah, green around the ears.
I have to look up that one.
Yeah.
One thing about affirmations is, I always say this, I don't know if it's funny or not, but I asked the whole class, who here uses affirmations? Like 2 or 3 people like raise their hand. Like, you're lying. Everybody uses affirmations. Every time you use an I am statement or a you are statement, you're affirming something. So if you say, oh, I'm always late, or like, oh, you know, I just can't get myself together. Anytime you use a statement about, every time you use a statement about yourself, I am, that's an affirmation. Or
I can't
do that. Or, you know, my back hurts. Anything is an affirmation like that. When you use it in the present tense, or even past or whatever future tense.
I can't. I'm too old for
so
that.
if you say that you don't use affirmations, 99% of you are lying.
You're lying.
Yeah. Everybody uses affirmations.
Well, we all, and we're either, if we're not
even
using
saying
new
I don't
ones,
use
we're
affirmations is an affirmation.
Damn, you're stuck now, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
the best way that I've seen affirmations work is when I did the cacao ceremony. Can I talk about the cacao ceremony?
yeah, go ahead. Talk about the cacao.
So when, again, going back to using, I want to talk about authority and all that stuff too. So I'm going to interrupt you. The best way to don't do it from a place of lying, right? The seed of truth is there, right? So if someone feels like they're not confident, there is still a seed of confidence within you somewhere, right? Even if you're confident in how unconfident you are, you have to start with the seed of truth. And there's always the confidence wants to come in you. So using the statements, I embrace, or I release, or I invite are really good ways to use affirmations where you don't have that I'm lying to myself thing, right? So I release the compulsion to smoke, right? I invite healthy eating habits into my life, are like a really powerful way to use affirmations rather than just say, I'm a healthy eater. Or because right now you might not be a healthy eater. But you know, you take what you already have, right? Even if it's just a seed, and then you grow it from there. So you're not ever lying to yourself. You're starting with the seed of truth that is there, and you're just intensifying that.
That's a good word.
Growing it in the theater of your mind. So you got to catch yourself doing, you know, a good thing, and then, oh, see right there, I was confident. I just spoke to that person. I went out of my comfort zone. See, I am a confident person, and that's when you use the affirmation.
Yeah, whatever you're.
You don't use it after you fail.
Yeah, whatever you're watering and nurturing, that's what's going to grow, right?
And you do it with intensity, repetition, and authority.
So yeah, exactly. So if you're not setting time aside in the morning to meditate, right? That's the first thing you should do, even if it's only 10 minutes. Okay. Terry, you're gonna start doing this because you're almost on chapter, what, 2 or 3 of the book, I think, right? So we'll get into that. We'll cover this in the book that you're reading.
Green
But
round. Okay.
yeah. So especially when you're waking up, right, you're in a somewhat suggestive state, which is why the morning is the best time to do this, right? These things are all put in your subconscious mind. So these belief systems that you get, you got 2 left feet, right? For example, again, that belief system got put in by those 3 factors we talked about. It can be reprogrammed the same way. Okay. Now, you don't have to. What I mean by that is you don't gotta call your dad up and be like, Dad, I gotta reprogram this limiting belief that you put in. So you start telling me that I'm an agile person and that I don't have 2 left feet. You don't have to do that, right? This doesn't have to be done on the physical level. It's all done in the subconscious, and it can be replaced in the subconscious. And the theater of the mind, the subconscious mind doesn't differentiate between what is real and what is imagined. So if you're in a suggestive state and you imagine something happening with emotion, it's going to get imprinted in there anyway, even if it's not real, as long as it's, you're in a suggestive state, you're believing it, and you're doing it repeatedly. So you can do a visualization in the morning. You wake up and you make your tea, coffee, relax, be nice and quiet, take some breath, and take some time to visualize yourself doing something. And whoever that authoritative source, even if they're not even with you anymore, it doesn't matter. Imagine yourself doing something and them going, wow, you're pretty agile. You're really coordinated. I was really surprised. And then you say to yourself, I am really coordinated. And at first, if you want to say it like a little bit of a surprise, it's fine. Gee whiz, I am really coordinated. You can do that. It's fine, right? Because that's going to be more believable. Now, the more you do that, the more often you do that, it's going to change from, wow, I am really coordinated to like, yes, I am coordinated. Thank you for noticing, right? So if you run that play in your mind, you're gradually going to start reprogramming that subconscious, belief system there. It doesn't have to happen in real life. You just have to follow those 3 things. Now, intensify it like you talked about. If you intensify that visualization to the point where it brings a tear to your eye, right, then that's going to set it on fire. That's part of that emotional intensity.
Heather's gonna have to use the Zoom, so we have to get off Zoom.
We got to get off Zoom. Okay.
Lacey, we have to dismiss the Zoom because the gold team is getting on for class.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna wrap up. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, I don't know what else I could add to that. I just enjoyed listening to how everything
So much
came
better having
full.
you here.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for joining us. We'll try to start earlier next week. If you're gonna be with us again, we'll start probably closer to 3 o'clock. We'll try, so that way we can get more done, have more time.
Yeah.
Because it definitely is nicer when someone's live. It's a lot nicer. So anyway.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I just love all the positivity that you bring to everything, Miss Gibbons.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us. It's awesome to have you. And yeah, please join us again next week.
Thanks. Yeah, that was fun. Okay, bye.
Okay, see you. What do you want to do? End the meeting?
No, just
Sign us out?
no, just leave it.
I'm just gonna turn
Wait,
this,
Heather
stop
will-
recording.
Heather will get on in a second.
Okay.
We could talk though, we could keep going.
Yeah, we got some time.
Yeah. If you're gonna work on changing your self-image, right, and this is in psychocybernetics too, you really have to accept that meditation is gonna be part of it. So, and you might not like the word meditation because you don't like sitting on the ground, or you don't like sitting with your legs crossed, or you don't like thinking about nothing, and that's not the type of meditation that it's talking about. But it is gonna take some mental work to do it, just like it took mental work to get it in. So the kind of meditation that I will use is a lot more active and fun, right? And there's external things that you can do to help you too. So and to make it more fun, right? If you're gonna meditate, or you're gonna do some kind of ritual to change your self-image, right? Whether it's just taking 5 minutes or 10 minutes in the morning to visualize and use affirmations or something like that, you got to make it you got to make it fun, right? And you got to make it emotional and important to you. So one thing that can change self-image, like if you think about it, is if you find something out about your ancestry, right? You ever realize that? Like,
Yeah.
where you're like, oh, like this is a dramatic example just from the show that we were watching, but like if you found out, you know, your parents weren't your real parents or something like that, right? That's like a dramatic example, but that can change your self-image, right? So if you learn about maybe your history or it could be a group that you belong to, right? Like if you go to Scouts or something, I don't know, whatever. Kung Fu, right? And use something that it's important and it has emotion already behind it, right? So you can piggyback on top of the things that you already feel passionate about, whether that's your ancestry or maybe you're so emotional you're going against your ancestry or something like that because you don't like how it was, right? Anything like that can really generate a lot of emotion to help you with this theater of the mind kind of thing, right? Kind of like in Moana. You seen that movie?
I gotta watch it again. I remember I watched like the last half hour.
Yeah.
I can't remember anything before that.
She like wants to leave the island, right? And everyone's like, no, don't leave the island. It's scary. And then she finds out that their culture used to leave the island
Crazy.
and explore. Yeah.
And they just stopped.
Yeah, they just stopped because it was like bad. I don't remember. I gotta watch it
You gotta
again.
watch the
too.
movie. I just know that the Rock.
But
was in
that
it.
that like affirmed her that she was right and she needed to.
But that's scary. It's scary to go against the grain like that.
Yeah.
When everyone's saying one thing and you want to do something else. Very scary.
Yeah.
It takes courage.
So sometimes you do look to the past and you look to other wisdom and you look to authoritative sources that.
That's a good point. And the authoritative sources again don't have to be
They don't have to be living.
don't
people.
have to be living people.
So if somebody once said tradition is just peer pressure from dead people. And there's a good thing about peer pressure and there's bad peer pressure. We know
Yeah.
there's good peer pressure and bad pressure. So if traditions matter to you or if authors matter to you, read authors, right? Read about the past, read about traditions that support you in your self-image.
There's a good point
That's
about
been
that
helpful for
in Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill talks about that because he has a whole chapter on the mastermind principle, right? Which is essentially mastermind principle is huge. That's why we like part of what we do in Kung Fu is have that mastermind. We're all reading a book together. We're discussing how it applies to life together. Because you're all reading it together, that's that positive peer pressure. It makes a lot more happen, right? Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Yeah.
So, but he writes about that. But he says that I'm pretty sure it was I think Rich. He says that the mastermind group doesn't even necessarily doesn't necessarily have to be people that are alive. So he would mastermind with people, in meditation, he would mastermind with people that were no longer alive. Now, that doesn't mean he's having some kind of seance or something like that. It just means that he's closing his eyes and visualizing what would this person say, based on what he believes about that person, right? Maybe, and maybe it's just in his mind. Maybe he's, I don't know, connecting with that person on a level. Who knows? Doesn't really matter. The point is that can work effectively too. It doesn't have to be limited to someone who is actually within reach for you. That's not the point of it. So anyway, I don't know where Gibbons went, but I think I'm going to leave it at that for today. Thank you guys very much for joining me. Again, if you want to copy the audiobook, please comment below. Just say, yes, I'd like a copy of it, and I'll send you the details for that. And if you've got a copy of it so far, I only released a couple chapters so far, so sorry about the wait, Tara. I'll try to get more recorded in a jiffy and send it to your way by the end of the weekend. Okay? Thanks for joining me, guys. I will talk to you. You want to come say bye real quick?
Bye, everyone.
Okay, we'll talk to you next week.